Hello. My name is Vanessa, and this is the story of me and my family. It all started, or maybe it all unraveled, on my wedding day. That was the day my sister, Sabrina, made a scene so explosive it cracked open years of resentment that had been papered over with polite smiles and holiday cards. She threw champagne. She smashed my cake. And then, for the grand finale, she stood in the middle of my reception, locked eyes with me, and screamed, "This is what you get for acting like you're better." Then she walked out. My mom hugged her like she was the one who'd been attacked. Whispered, "She just needs to let it out," as if that justified anything. My dad looked at the floor and muttered something about how if I had just bought her the car. And I said nothing. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I refused to let her turn my wedding into her stage. That night, while my new husband Marcus hung up our clothes and tried to soothe the silence, I did what no one expected. I sat down at my laptop and calmly logged into the university portal. I revoked the $10,400 tuition deposit I'd paid for Sabrina. Then I went into the rental portal, locked the co-signed lease on her apartment, and flagged the account for review. I didn't cry. I didn't vent. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just felt finished. Because it's wild how one moment, one screaming fit, one shattered cake, one glass of champagne thrown in front of 143 wedding guests can rewrite every memory you thought was. Suddenly, every loan I gave her didn't look like support. It sounded like enabling. And every year her big sister, "She looks up to you," started to feel like a sentence I never agreed to serve. This wasn't just my wedding. This was the tipping point. And whether my family knew it or not, I was done. But the real shock? That came the next morning. The next morning, my phone lit up at exactly 8:40 a.m. It was Sabrina. She called. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "What the hell? Why is the portal locked? I can't access anything. Did you do this?" By the sixth one, the fake confusion dropped. The last message just said, "Fix this." I muted my phone. Made coffee. Sat in my robe on the balcony next to Marcus, while the sun came up like it didn't care what had happened the night before. I didn't tell Marcus right away. Not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted a moment, just one, to enjoy the quiet. The peace of not having to explain myself. The stillness of knowing I'd finally done something just for me. A few hours later, my mom called. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. "Your sister's very upset. She feels abandoned." Call me. Abandoned? Sabrina wasn't abandoned when she called me hyperventilating from a gas station, saying her car had broken down again and she didn't know what to do. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her between breaths. I stayed on the phone with her for 40 minutes, talking her down while Googling nearby mechanics from my laptop. She wasn't abandoned when she texted me, saying, "I need a cosigner or I'm going to be homeless," and followed it with, "Please. You're the only one who's ever helped me." I signed the lease the next morning while sitting in my car, skipping a meeting to send in paperwork she hadn't even filled out correctly. She wasn't abandoned when she trashed that Airbnb in Austin, invited twice the number of people allowed, broke a lamp, spilled red wine on a white futon, and left the front door wide open overnight because someone lost the key. The host threatened legal action. I had to message the guy myself and pay him out of pocket just to keep Sabrina's name from being flagged. She promised to handle it. She didn't. She promised to pay me back. She didn't. She promised she'd get her life together. She never even tried. But now that I finally set a boundary, now she was abandoned. Sure, Sabrina didn't speak to me for 3 full days after the wedding. Then one day she showed up outside our apartment. She didn't text, didn't call, just stood there banging on the door like she owned the place. But she didn't know we'd installed a Ring camera the week before. My husband saw her through the feed. He didn't open the door. He didn't even go near it. He pressed the intercom and said, "Sabrina, you need to leave. This isn't the way to handle anything." She looked up at the camera like it had insulted her personally. Started shouting that she only needed 5 minutes. That she was being iced out. That we were acting high and mighty. He spoke again, calm and even. "If you try to force your way in, I'll call the police." Then he ended the feed. She stood there a while longer, staring into the lens like she was waiting for it to blink. Then finally walked off, no apology, no message. Just that same entitled energy like we had crossed her. I was sitting in the room listening to the whole thing. She left in a fury, yelling something about legal rights, about how I couldn't just yank everything without warning. But the truth? I absolutely could. I was the primary on the lease. She was just the resident. Legally, I had every right to lock it down. And I had. 3 days passed. Then she sent me an email. Subject line, "Are you seriously doing this?" Inside was a full list of her upcoming expenses, like I was her accountant or personal sponsor. She said if I didn't reinstate the tuition, she'd have to drop out. That if she got evicted, it would be on me. She said she only acted out at the wedding because she was overwhelmed. That I was the only one in the family with real money. That I was letting it go to my head. I didn't answer. That's when Sabrina escalated. She showed up again. This time, she waited for Marcus to come home from work and tried to slip in through the door behind him as he unlocked it. She thought she could catch me off guard. Marcus stepped back, turned around, and blocked her with his arm. Calm. Steady. He didn't raise his voice. He said, "If you ever try that again, I'll call the police." Sabrina scoffed, tried to talk her way in, but Marcus didn't flinch. He placed a firm hand on her shoulder and guided her backward out the doorway, then stepped into the hallway and shut the door between them. No shouting. No scene. Just a clear, unshakable boundary. For once, someone other than me had drawn a line she couldn't cross. The next day, my phone lit up. "Dad." He started the call with a sigh. "We need to talk about your sister." I asked what, exactly, he thought we still had to talk about. "She's spiraling. You need to help her land." I told him I'd been doing that for years. He told me not to punish her for a bad moment. I told him it wasn't a moment. It was a pattern. When he started rambling about family unity, I hung up. Because here's the thing, Sabrina wasn't spiraling. She was falling. And for the first time, no one was catching her. After that, we didn't talk about it much. Marcus and I just settled. Something shifted. It wasn't tension, it was peace. He'd drawn his line, I'd drawn mine. And for once, we weren't apologizing for it. Sabrina started texting Marcus instead of me. Not that it worked. Her messages were long, performative apologies wrapped in guilt trips. Little paragraphs pretending to be mature, always ending with some version of, "She owes me." Marcus blocked her after the 4th message. That's when Sabrina switched tactics. She messaged our parents. Claimed she'd been physically attacked. Said Marcus had ambushed her when she came to reconcile. Said she feared for her safety. A few hours later, my phone dinged with a group chat notification. Dad had added me, Marcus, Mom, and Sabrina. First message. "Let's have an honest talk without yelling or blocking. We're still a family." Sabrina jumped in immediately. She said she was hurt. That she acted out at the wedding because she felt invisible. That no one had acknowledged how forgotten she'd been. She claimed I'd been rubbing my success in her face for years. Then my mom added, "It's time to move forward. She's still your baby sister." Marcus read it and quietly left the group chat. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed, "She's not a baby. She's 22. She needs to learn the cost of disrespect." No one replied. No bubbles. Just silence. 2 days later, Ava told me Sabrina had officially vacated her apartment. She couldn't pay rent. Couldn't find a subletter. The leasing company reached out to me to close the account. I signed everything. Made sure my credit was protected. Then moved on. But the real kicker? A week later, Sabrina enrolled back in school, under our parents' names. Turns out, they paid the tuition themselves. So, they had the money. They just didn't want to use it. Not until I refused to. I wasn't angry. I just saw it clearly. That night, Marcus and I sat on our balcony, drinking cheap wine and eating leftovers. I told him I felt like a decade-long wait had finally been cut loose. He smiled and said, "Good. Now we can live." And for the first time, I believed him. About a week after Sabrina left the apartment, things went quiet. No more angry texts. No more surprise visits. For the first time in years, it felt like the storm had actually passed. Then my mom called. No, hi. No, how are you? Just. You'll be at your father's birthday next Saturday, right? Like none of it had happened. Like my wedding hadn't been hijacked. Like Sabrina hadn't screamed in front of nearly 150 people. I said I wasn't sure. She paused, then added, Sabrina will be there. I want you two to talk like adults. And I want you to stop being so cold. That part stuck. Just. Me? I was the cold one? Not the one who shattered a cake. Not the one who hurled glass across the room. Not the one who lived off me for 3 years. No, I was the problem. Because I finally said no. I hung up without agreeing to anything. That night, Marcus and I made dinner. We didn't even bring it up until halfway through eating. He said we shouldn't go. I agreed. But Friday night, the day before the party, Sabrina sent me a Venmo payment, $1,800 labeled, for the cake and broken frame. LOL. Let's just call it even. I didn't even react. Just handed my phone to Marcus and walked outside. When I came back in, he looked totally calm. What did you write? I asked. He shrugged. She's not going to like it. 15 minutes later, we were both blocked. We didn't go to the party. But Sabrina did, and she didn't come quietly. She showed up in a white gown that looked suspiciously bridal. Ava texted me a photo with the caption. She's not okay. Apparently, she brought some real estate guy she'd met 2 weeks prior. Told half the guests they were talking told the other half. Big things are coming. She said it on repeat. That Monday, we found out what the big thing was. Sabrina launched a podcast. Title, Bloodline Bruises, Growing Up with the Golden Child. The teaser dropped on Instagram and TikTok. Her voiceover was dramatic and dripping with victimhood. I thought family meant safety. But sometimes the most toxic people are the ones you share a last name with. She'd signed with a sponsor. A therapy app. The same one I introduced her to a year earlier when she was crying in a bar bathroom during a panic attack. They reposted her teaser. 10,000 views in 24 hours. People in the comments were calling her brave. Saying they related. Asking for advice. I didn't care about the podcast itself. What got to me was that I was being written into her fiction. Then came an email. Subject line, let's talk. Body. I'd like to meet. No drama. Just a conversation. I have things I want to tell you. I think you'll be proud of me. No blame. No venom. Just polished, calm language. It didn't feel like her at all. Marcus read it and said, she's not trying to fix anything. She's setting a trap. I replied with one line, Marcus will be there, too. She never responded. But I had a feeling. This wasn't over. 3 days after that email, my parents showed up. No call. No warning. Just rang the bell at 7:15 p.m. while Marcus and I were eating dinner. I opened the door halfway. My dad gave a little wave like this was just some casual drop-in. My mom had her purse on her shoulder like she planned to stay. She said, we just want to talk calmly. I told them they had 3 minutes. They walked in anyway. Marcus stayed in the kitchen. Arms crossed. Quiet. He wasn't going to fake smile through it. He didn't have to. Everyone in that room already knew exactly where he stood. My mom started in first. Said Sabrina was going through a transformative period. That she regretted her mistakes. That the podcast was just a way of processing, and I shouldn't take it so personally. Then my dad chimed in. She wants a relationship with you. She just doesn't know how to say it. I asked, has she actually said that? Or are you just hoping I'll fall for it? Silence. Then my mom said something that stopped everything. She moved back in with us. Just temporarily. Until she figures things out. Marcus exhaled, loud enough to fill the room. And suddenly, everything made sense. They'd paid her tuition. Let her move back home. And now they were standing in our apartment, not to ask us for anything, but to manage us. To make sure we didn't make things harder for her. They weren't mediating. They were shielding. I asked them, point blank, did either of you tell her what she did at the wedding was wrong? My mom said she was overwhelmed. My dad said she didn't mean to ruin it. I asked again, "Did you tell her it was wrong?" They didn't answer. That silence told me everything. They weren't mad at her. They were embarrassed. And the easiest way to get rid of embarrassment? Blame the one who set the boundary. I told them I was done with the money, with the guilt, with the games. If they wanted to keep rescuing her, they could. But it wouldn't come from me anymore. I told them they'd done a fantastic job raising a daughter who believed consequences didn't apply. Then I asked them to leave. They hesitated. But they left. Sabrina never reached out again. But her podcast kept going. Episode 2, Narcissistic Siblings. Episode 3, When They Make You Look Crazy. Marcus and I actually laughed at that one. A few days later, I checked the lease on our apartment. We had 8 months left. I looked at our savings, then looked at Marcus. "Let's take a trip," I said. "Far. Warm. No family. Just peace." He smiled. The next morning, we booked 2 round-trip flights to the Maldives. 6 weeks out. The last message I ever got from Sabrina came 2 days before we left. Just a fire emoji. No words. No context. Like she wanted to send some vague warning. Or remind me she was still watching. I showed Marcus while we were picking out luggage tags. He didn't even flinch. Just scanned his boarding pass and said, "Perfect. Let it burn." I blocked the number. That was the last loose thread. No calls from my dad. One generic, "Hope you're well," text from my mom that I ignored. I think they finally realized I wasn't going to fix what they broke. Not this time. We left for the Maldives on a Thursday morning. No layovers. No rushing. No drama. I watched Marcus sleep against the window as we crossed the ocean. And for the first time in years, my brain wasn't on fire. No financial math. No emergency planning. No guilt weighing down every decision. Just silence. And sun. And air. Our bungalow sat directly above the water. You could hear the ocean breathing under the floorboards. There was a sign posted on the wall. "No clocks. Let time be yours again." That hit me harder than it should have. We didn't talk about Sabrina. Not even once. Not until day 4. We were eating breakfast on the deck. Just birds, waves, sky. That kind of quiet that makes you forget people like her even exist. Then Marcus asked, "Get people like her even exist? Do you think they'll ever admit it?" I didn't need to ask who he meant. "No," I said. "But I think they know." Not in the kind of way they'll ever say out loud. But in that quiet, awful way people feel when their scapegoat walks away and doesn't look back. They know I was always the one cleaning up her messes. They know they let it happen. They know they picked comfort over accountability. And now? They know I'm out of reach. Sabrina stayed with them. She never got a new apartment. Never said thank you. Never said sorry. She never will. And I don't need her to. I don't need the apology. I just needed it to end. The podcast fizzled. Engagement tanked. The sponsor dropped her. Then came the silence. Not just digital, real. I stopped checking her socials. My mom stopped sending group texts. My dad never mentioned her again, even when he called to ask about a mechanic. Eventually, Ava told me Sabrina enrolled part-time again. Sabrina scoffed, tried to talk her way in. My parents paid for it. Used a rainy day fund. Turns out, they always had it. They just didn't want to use it. Not until I refused to. Marcus and I came home to a different life. We moved farther from the city. Closer to quiet. No buzzing phones. No split payments. No rescue missions. Just us. I got a new credit card. Changed my banking password for the first time in 6 years. No more surprise withdrawals. No more Venmo requests labeled "Please don't ask." We don't talk about the wedding anymore. We don't need to. It's just a strange little footnote in a story that no longer belongs to us. Some nights, we sit on the porch with wine and watch the neighbor's dog chase moths under the porch light. We talk about books, trips, Marcus's business idea, things that feel real, things that feel ours. That old life? It doesn't even feel like mine anymore. It's something I watched happen, something I closed the book on. Because sometimes, fire doesn't need to be fought. Sometimes, you just let it burn itself out, and walk away, finally warm. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. And if you're someone who's had to choose peace over pleasing your family, if you've been the responsible one, the fixer, the so-called golden child who is really just the reliable one, you're not alone. You are not cold for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for saying enough. You're protecting the life you've built, and that takes strength. So if you've been waiting for a sign to put yourself first, this is it. Stay strong. And when you're ready, share your story. You never know who needs to hear that it's okay to walk away.